Welcome to today's episode of the BOWTIEGUY podcast. On today's episode, I want to talk to you about the genesis of TPT. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, why is this guy taking a throwback, Michael J. Fox, back to the 80s, talking about that computer speak? Nah, we're talking about the genesis, the beginning of TPT. And you're like, TPT? That's a research-based strategy, an entire umbrella of strategies, right? Total participation techniques. Well, you know what? If you're thinking that way, hey, you're on another playing field. Maybe perhaps another episode we'll talk about that. But TPT, as I know it, stands for Teachers Pay Teachers. You know what? I believe you can attribute this quote to Thomas Edison. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Do you believe that? I believe it because you know what? I became an even better teacher when I had a vested interest, when I had a stake and ownership in the things that I could create for my students. Now, I knew that I had the ability to create great things for my classroom, and I thought to myself, if I could create great things, great curriculum pieces, great assessment pieces, great high yield, research-based strategy, engaging activities for my students in my classroom, hey, I had the ability to do that for teachers in other classrooms, in other districts, in other counties, in other states, in other countries even. Today, I can proudly say that Teachers Pay Teachers has revolutionized my life in the fact that BOWTIEGUY, which started in March of 2013, has just exploded into something that gave me a voice to the voiceless, if you will. It gave me my vitamins and minerals, man. It buffed me up like Popeye and spinach. What I'm saying is that it gave me an opportunity to appreciate the gifts that I had and the talents that I had, and it gave me a platform, a medium, where people recognize my talents. And it's a good feeling. Like when people leave feedback, and you know what, I've gotten great feedback from people all around the world that it's very constructive too. You can tell that it's well thought out in what they have to say about my products. And so, I've just learned that necessity is the mother of all invention. And Teachers Pay Teachers kind of had its genesis, if you will, because that's kind of the title of the episode, its beginnings heading to a time in the district where I was working in as a teacher in somewhat of a financial catastrophe, financial calamity, financial peril. The county of which I was working in was the mecca of educational achievement, the mecca of instructional strategies, the mecca of happiness amongst teachers and culture and environment. But then, you know what? It all went boom. And we realized that fiscally, things just weren't working out. So effectively, my story, my genesis with TPT starts with the time where we had some restructuring in the county that I was working in. And effectively what happened was a school needed to be closed in order to conserve millions of dollars in order to make the school system solvent. And if you know anything about Georgia law, if you're operating as a board of education, if I'm not mistaken, it's illegal to operate in a negative budget. And what I'm saying is you need to be fiscally solvent. You have to have money to pay the bills. You have to have money to keep the power on for the kids. You see what I'm saying? Because that could be a big problem if you can't even keep the lights on. And so we were facing financial peril as a county. And you know what? I'm going to go back to that Thomas Edison quote, necessity is the mother of all invention. I had to go get a part-time job. And I'm going to be honest, why I had to get a part-time job in the midst of working, teachers, they toe up from the floor. Name a teacher that works a 40-hour week, and I'll tell you a teacher that's either getting ready to head out the door or a teacher that wants to be fired because it's hard to spend just 40 hours being even the worst teacher. You see what I'm saying? It takes time. It's a labor of love. Well, I kind of had my time, the currency of time that I had, hijacked. And I'm going to say hijacked because, the financial calamity, the financial catastrophe, the financial peril that the county was going through, it wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with it. However, I was hit twice in this because not only was I furloughed a substantial amount of days. And if I'm not mistaken, my wife and I, who are both teachers in this county, we were furloughed collectively 32 school days. Now, I just want you to think. The number 30 and 32, dang, that's an entire month of pay. And if you know anything, that's a lot of days. And so that's a lot of days that we weren't getting paid. And it just so happened to be the time that we introduced a baby girl into the world. And so what I'm saying is that we were in dire straits because we were having to have tough discussions, tough negotiations, the tough methods in which we were approaching what bills we were not even going to pay. What I'm saying is, not only were we getting furloughed 32 days, we were actually getting hit with our property taxes as well, because the county in which I worked actually had the highest millage rate in the state of Georgia, and it was consecutive for many years, because we were trying to generate funds in order to pretty much fill in the potholes, if you will, to make ourselves solvent. And so you can't tell me that it didn't have a catastrophic effect on student achievement, and it's something that the county is still suffering from today, going all the way back to the financial catastrophe, because it kind of trickled down. You would see an enhancement of the teacher to student ratio. You would see possibly negotiations about not purchasing curriculum sets. You see what I'm saying? Like, it led to tough conversations. But needless to say, necessity is the mother of all invention, and it created a course in the course of the initiation of a charter system where there was increased flexibility given to the county in juxtaposition for increased achievement. And hopefully I can get on that another day, because that's not necessarily always true. That's a contract given by the state, but hey, that's not my monkey, not my circus for this particular episode. The genesis of TPT. So here I was in a position where I was having to go work at Lowe's, home improvement, baby. Sad reality is I was kind of suffering from a period of disillusionment, because if memory serves me correctly, I was having to work at Lowe's all throughout college to pay my bills in college. And I thought to myself, I remember my last day working at Lowe's, because I had just gotten a teaching job, and I was like, sayonara, suckers, because I was thinking that I'd worked my entire life to have a professional job where I could wear a shirt and a tie, and and I'm not saying I was better than anyone or thinking I was hoity-toity, if you know what I'm saying. But look, when I had to go eat that massive, I'm talking massive, one of those big old pizza pie humble pies, and I had to go back to work as one of the blue collar workers, because look, I had to firsthand pay for the consequences of, and perhaps maybe, like, we're so quick to point fingers, can you imagine running an enterprise, a business? Because effectively that's what a board of education, that's what a county school system effectively is. It's a business. And there's monumental decisions that have to be made almost on a daily, minute to minute, hour to hour basis. And so, one maybe ill-conceived decision can lead to a snowball effect, if you will. And it's kind of like the housing market of 2008. We had tremors, and then it finally happened. And then that's where there was somewhat of an economic recession in the United States. But getting back to the genesis of TPT, I was starting my job at Lowe's, and I was working many nights. I'd venture to say I was trying to work as much as possible, because there was a lot of money that I needed to make to compensate for the lack of money that I should have been making as a teacher. Now, collectively, my family kind of suffered during that time, because, like I said, we had a brand new baby girl, but I was just not available, because my currency of time, that availability, and if you know anything about a teacher, you know that they don't have a lot of time, because they're so committed. They're so just entangled in the everyday dealings of their classroom and their school and their district and their duties and responsibilities and obligations within the contract of their school system, the Board of Education. And it came a time where, like, I believe for couple of years, I had to become a 40-hour-a-week teacher, because I was having to work at least 30 hours to make ends meet. So I had a brand new mama at home with a brand new baby girl that I needed to ensure that I could keep a roof over their head and keep food in their mouths as well. So TPT came to a spot where I knew that I had some things I had created. Now, we started small. We started with sorts. And you're like, what in the blue moon of Kentucky is a sort? A sort, you cut, paste, you identify similarities and differences. I was just madly, head over heels clicking in love with the research of Dr. Robert Marzano, even as a young lad, probably my second, third, fourth year teaching. And one of his big instructional strategies, high-yielding instructional strategies that would check and wreck the student achievement in that particular school, was the ability for a student to identify similarities and differences. So what did I do? Hey, I put 2 and 2 together, started creating some things for my kids, not thinking that I was going to make a lucrative career out of it, and I didn't even think about it. But for a while, I was creating sorts left and right. And if any of my listeners out there worked with me during a time where we, especially when we were in the 3rd grade, Lord, I was madly in love with the sort. Lord, I had student work of sorts, cut, paste, match, compare, contrast, because of the high yield effect size, the achievement that could be expected when a student identifies similarities and differences. Now, in part 2, I'm going to keep on the narrative in the genesis of TPT. So what happens next? What happens after I create these sorts? What are you going to do with it? Let's find out in episode 2.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.